And because I allowed it, my life became full of obligations that I had to meet that didn't fill me up at all. At that point, it was full of sacrifice and also full of a lot of struggle as well. So you hit the nail on the head when you talk about doing what you love across all areas of your life, because when you're in there, the guilt really does tend to evaporate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host and founder and the man from Leeds, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews.
Oh! You're going to ask me how I'm doing?
Nope, I'm trying to switch it up just so now that I can see your face. I want to see your reaction. So a little psychological testing. Tim, how are you doing?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's very important to me that you do ask me how I'm doing, Doug. So, yeah, I'm doing great. I loved the last episode. Yeah, it was fun.
Great. Tim, what do you have on the plate for us today?
The guilt and shame of working so much.
Ooh, I've definitely been there. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
The guilt and shame of working so much. So what's been your experience with that?
Well, transparently, this afternoon I was working. I've got a big action list here as we've been cranking through it. And Amelia comes into the office and she's like, "Oh, can you just take a break for 5? Can you take a break for 5 minutes?" Yeah, Doug was just waving at me then through the video. I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" Hence the pause.
You turned your face and I couldn't hear you in the microphone very well.
All right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So as I was saying, that was funny. Just doing these big waves and points. So she comes into the office and you know what it's like when you're working, don't you? You're in the zone, you're getting stuff done, you're making decisions, boom, 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 boom. It for me anyway, it takes a lot for me to break my focus away from doing that, to then instantly switch into a mode that is that enables me to be able to then connect and play with Amelia. She came and she sat on my lap and put her arm around me and was wanting to chat. So at first I said, "No, look, I don't have 5 minutes. I'm just getting this stuff done." She's like, "You don't have 5 minutes." You know what it's like sometimes when, those 5 minutes, it can just feel like 5 weeks when you're just in that zone. But I did. I put my laptop away and I just, sat there with her and, just connected with her for a few minutes. But, that is something that is a constant juggle for me personally. The guilt and shame of feeling like I'm working so much, even though we have like the decompression routines that we go through after a long day that really help me to unwind and then be present with Amelia. There's sometimes when it's difficult too, because I just love what I do. I love the Powerful Man. I love the work that we do. I love building the company. I love the people that we work with on the team. Everything about it. I absolutely love it. So it's easy for me to work longer than, let's say, I sometimes say that I will. But a big driver for me as well is making sure that, I keep a check on it, because I know that, in the next couple of years when we do have kids, this is something for me that, I'm really passionate about, making sure I'm there as a father. It's a big focus of mine to set things up now so that that's going to happen. And it's the guilt and shame of working so much is a constant checking in of it for me, constant checking in. I'm always checking in with myself, and it always comes back to this point. I either feel guilty because I have then finished early sometimes, and I'm gone with Amelia, and for the first bit I might be thinking about work, or I am, working longer and I'm not with Amelia, and obviously I work from home and Amelia doesn't work, so you can hear her pottering about the house sometimes and playing with the dogs, and it can be a glorious afternoon, sun shining. So I'm just going to take the dogs for a walk. Do you want to come? And I'm like, oh, I would love absolutely love to be out there with you, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So yeah, as I'm discussing this, I'm thinking through in my own mind, well, what do I do? What do I actually do to be able to navigate this? And a big part of it for me is making sure that I stay in constant communication with Amelia. Constant communication about what's going on within the business, how I am, obviously where she is as well, making sure that, you know, she feels seen and heard too. We're playing in her world, examining her dreams and her wishes and so on too. Because I know something that I used to do as a business owner is get so wrapped up in making it all about me that I used to forget to check in with her and her world. And also, alongside that communication, just being willing to be called out by Amelia. That used to push my buttons. She used to say, "You told me you wouldn't work. You told me." I used to just, I used to say, "Well, you just don't get it. You don't. I'm doing this for us, and you've said you want to go to these places. You've said you want these things. Well, how do you expect that to happen?" I just used to feel so torn. Whereas now I welcome it so much more because obviously I've done the work on myself, so I'm able to spot that trigger. But yeah, I mean, how do you handle it?
It's a great question. Now it's not a big issue for me, but it used to be. I used to be, and I still kind of am, addicted to guilt. That feeling of guilt coming up through, the way I was raised, and guilt was used with me, quite a bit to get me to manipulate me, to get me to do things. And so I feel guilty still quite often. But the work thing's not as bad. So like you, it's constant communication. Also, one day my wife sat me down and we had a conversation about it. And she's like, "Look, I don't mind that you work a lot because you do what you love. We're not in a position where we have to work, but a position where we want to work. That's a beautiful thing. A lot of people don't have that. But I still work a lot." She's like, "Look, but when you're with me, when you're with our family, I want you to be present. I'd rather have one night, maybe 2 nights where you're just 100% present and we do something fun and have a great time, rather than having 5 or 7 nights where they're just okay, where you're checking your phone, you're not really present, your mind's elsewhere." Like, that's horrible. It's almost worse. It's a sort of emotional and mental torture for my wife. And I really got that, Tim, and that really resonated with me. So how I do it is constant communication. Even today, my wife and I were talking and we're making plans and we're solidifying our schedules for the end of the year, which sounds like a long way, right? So we're here recording this in the beginning of October, right? And we're still planning the calendars. We have people that want to visit. We have every weekend in October and November book solid, right? And most of the weeks booked with friends and family, all great stuff. But it's the communication, right? Here are things that I get to do, right? Every Tuesday, Tim and I get together to record these podcasts, right? So this is what I need in order to make that happen. I need the house to be quiet. We're lucky enough, Tim, you and I, to work from home. But with that comes other responsibilities. You're also always there, right? Why can't Tim come out and play, right? Why can't Daddy play? My son wants to knock on my door. Things of that nature. So it's the constant communication. But I also make sure I validate her and what her time is, right? What are the things that you want? She came up to me today and she said, or yesterday, and said, "I just need time to myself." So I said, "Great, not a problem." I went to my schedule. I rearranged meetings and things like that. And she's going to have the day tomorrow to herself, which is awesome because I can play with my son, right? That erases that feeling of guilt for working too much because I'm still allowed to really dive into my passions, which, the powerful man, helping powerful men realize their power. It's such an amazing thing. But it's that communication that comes in there, Tim, that I find is all too critical. And then really understanding, what we do with the guys when we do the 90-day game is I explain to my wife why this is important to me. Why is meeting Tim for, an hour and a half, 2 hours for the podcast important to me? Who does it affect? Well, how does it tie into my family and me? And then my wife also has done the work. So she understands that work, so to speak, what we call work, is obviously we enjoy it, but we'll still call it work. It was something that fills my cup. It's something that fills me up. And I make sure work doesn't get in the way of my priorities, like missing things with my son and my wife and friends. And I tie them in. I get to fly to the UK here in November for another Alpha Reset. So the guys that are listening to this that'll be going, can't wait to meet you guys there. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of work, but I also get to play. I get to hang out with Arthur. I get to hang out with Lee. I get to hang out with Rick. And it's going to be such a good time. And so, yeah, it's work, but I put things in place where I don't feel guilty about living my dreams.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, I think as you share this, yeah, I think for Amelia and I, the constant communication definitely helps. I think where I could probably, where I could improve is I could be a bit more flexible sometimes, I would say. Sometimes I can get so transfixed on, right, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, that it's like, oh, I've committed to this, so boom, I'm going there. But I've got a lot better at that. And I'm able to be a lot more flexible than I used to be. I mean, I used to be so, I don't know if it's stubborn. I don't know if stubborn's the right word, but I definitely used to be it was almost like I had OCD in a way. Okay, well, this is what we said we'd do, and this is the way we said it's going to be. Right, boom, tunnel vision, go there. And then you just miss everything else that goes on around it, all the other opportunities, all that life has to offer. And yeah, I'm definitely a lot better with that now, a lot better. And again, with the guilt and the shame, one of the things that has helped me is Amelia and I making sure that I'm committed to date nights or date days or whatever it is, whatever form it takes, for me to make sure that in my schedule, in my calendar, I have time every week, multiple times every week, to just be with Amelia. And sometimes I can plan these date nights that I think are going to be so great, and she just wants to hang out on the sofa. She just wants to do nothing and, just chat and listen to music, which is awesome. So, I'll just do that. I'll really play in her world. And I think another key thing for me as well in being balanced, being a lot more balanced, so that the guilt and the shame of working so much is a lot less, is taking time for myself. Whenever I take time for myself at the end of my week to review my week, just, an hour or two, to review how my week has been, what's worked, what have been the wins, what are the lessons, how I'm going to, change for next week, that always helps me to catch the pattern so much quicker and put things in place before they reach a boiling point where Amelia is then bringing them to me. It always helps if I say to Amelia at the end of the week, hey, do you know what? I realize that this week, I've worked a lot. So I'm going to take Monday afternoon off, and, I'd love to take you out to, I'd love to take you and the dogs out. We'll go for a walk along the beach, and this is where I think we could go. That works so much better in me acknowledging that I might have worked too much and bringing it to her than just thinking, oh, I got away with it that week, I'll keep going. I'll just keep working harder until it gets brought up. Clearly she doesn't mind because she's not said anything. Just because she's not said anything, it doesn't mean that she doesn't mind.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to ask you a question. Do you ever feel like something's just missing? Like there's something more out there and you just can't put your finger on it? I totally get it. Go over right now to thepowerfulman.com/freedom to discover the system that other businessmen just like you are using. We've included 10 case studies, 10 men just like you who have found the solution and have found their way on their path. And we want to share that with you. Go over to thepowerfulman.com/freedom right away. Now let's get back to the show.
Oh, so true. When we talk about the guilt of working too much, right? There's definitely a gap between what we are doing and what we think we should be doing. And that's where guilt can be put in, right? So we feel guilty about working too much, oftentimes when we feel like we're neglecting people around us that are important. That's when we feel guilty. We feel guilty for the way, one, are we missing out on the football match, or are we missing out on the baseball game, or missing out on the play or the recital or things like that? Are we missing those moments because we're working too much? Or perhaps, our loved ones sitting at home waiting for us. Are we missing dinners with them? Should we be a better father, right? Am I a good father is a question I ask myself all the time. Actually, it's the questions, am I a great father? That's things I want to strive for. And where the guilt comes in is when we don't hit that vision of what we think we should be or what we should be doing. And that's when it comes into alignment. And so that's one of the ways that we can get around that, Tim, is really aligning ourselves with our, why are we doing this, right? Work, for example. Is it serving the greater purpose of our good, of what we want? Who does it affect, right? So for you and Amelia, it could be, obviously the financial repercussions, or time, or just you filling your cup working with the guys, which you do such an amazing job with, coaching and mentoring them. And then you really want to look at kind of also a rocking chair test. And that's one I use a lot, and we use it with the men. But working today, the podcast that you and I are doing, I'll just use that as an example because my wife and my son are out playing right now, which is amazing. And there's definitely, you can feel guilty about, I should be at the playground, going down the slide with my son and having a great time outside, which is what I typically do. But also I know that this fills my cup. And the rocking chair test, I go, well, if I'm sitting in a rocking chair on my porch at 85, sipping a lemonade, will I be okay with this decision, or will I have regrets? And my 80-year-old self loves the fact that I'm doing this podcast with you, Tim. It loves it, right? It could be either or. It would love me playing on the slide too. So it eliminates the guilt when I go through that process, because I know I'm on my right path. I know there's not a gap between what Doug is doing in this moment and what I think Doug should be doing.
It comes back to a point that you said earlier that I think is really important. Now, when you actually are in a business or I'll use the word business. When you're in a business that actually means something to you, that transcends just making money, it takes on a different meaning, doesn't it? Right? So often when we first start working with the men, they've reached a point whereby they have made all of the money that they thought was going to make them happy. They have everything they thought was going to make them happy: the homes, the holidays, the wives, the wife, the watch, the car, so on. And it just hasn't worked. They end up feeling even more alone and unsatisfied, and then problems show up in the marriage and so on. So I think, you hit the nail on the head. When you're actually able to be aligned with the work that you're doing in the world, for me, I don't really feel like I experience sacrifice in my life. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything, because everything I do, even when I do work a little bit longer, the only thing that really comes in there is the feeling that, maybe I've communicated to Amelia that I'll finish at a certain time, and I'm finishing a little bit later than I said. I know that maybe she, it might be eating into our evening or whatever on the rare occasion. But regardless, I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything, because everything in my life, for me at this point, is such a fuck yes. Because I've learned that whenever I tolerated things being in my life, whether it was people, places, projects, whatever, that were kind of, vanilla, whatever, really that was a fuck no. But I just allowed it. And you get what you tolerate, right? And because I allowed it, my life became full of obligations that I had to meet that didn't fill me up at all. And at that point, it was full of sacrifice and also full of a lot of struggle as well. So you hit the nail on the head when you talk about doing what you love across all areas of your life, because when you're in there, the guilt really does tend to evaporate.
But even so, obviously we can have a discussion about whether you should be working in any business you're not passionate about. I definitely have strong opinions about that subject, but that could be another podcast that we can go over too. But the idea of that guilt, right? I encourage you guys to look at this because somebody pointed out in this life, are you guilty in other areas as well? Or are you just guilty in working too much? And if you're guilty, you feel guilty working too much and you agree with it, right? That's a key thing right here. You actually go through the whole process that we just mentioned and you agree with it. Now it's time for a change. So many of the men that come through the program, Tim, I was just talking to Rick, right? Who we know. And Rick comes back from this vacation with his wife. He comes back to his office and he's like, guys, I don't have anything to do here. I don't know what to do. His company's grown exponentially. He's like, I'm just walking around the office bugging everybody because he's put himself out of a job successfully. And he's taking care of himself, filling his cup and his soul. That's what allowed him to do it. Oftentimes, what I think happens, Tim, is a lot of the guys feel like their wheels are just spinning, right? They're spinning. Your wheels of a car, a race car, are spinning super fast, but they're not going anywhere. And so they dedicate more hours and more time. I'm going to get it done. Or they're not letting go of control. That's a big one. A lot of men don't want to let go of control because things are going to go awry, things aren't going to go right, et cetera, et cetera. So they have to have their fingers in every little pie and know everything that's going on, which causes them to have to work more and be at work more. So it becomes a process. So if you're noticing yourself in either of those scenarios, and then you have to ask your question, look, is this worth it? Is this really what I want? And if the answer is no, it's time to take radical change. Go to an alpha reset and you will rediscover your true center, your true north, so to speak. I wish, Tim, transparently, that all men would go through an alpha reset at varying levels of their life so they get that kind of reset. That's what it is, guys. You're resetting to your natural set point, your true north, so you can navigate this wilderness that's out there, so to speak. Because this feeling of guilt is really caused by societal pressures we put on ourselves based on marketing and other aspects, where society is saying, hey, Tim, you should be at this level. You should be doing these things, right? You should, be making £1 million a month as a leader of the Powerful Man movement. You should be working 60 hours a week. No, never mind. Everybody works 60. You need to work 80, right? Grind it out. You need to have a side hustle for your side hustle. It's really ridiculous about the demands that are placed on men today. And by the way, you need to have six-pack abs. You need to drive a really nice car. You need to have a great spiritual practice, a 4-hour morning practice where you're doing Wim Hof, you're doing Vipassana meditation for 2 hours, right? All these things that if you actually calculate it out would take you 40 hours in a day. It's just impossible. So we turn to work and then we have guilt around working too much. And society's pressures have put it upon us to have this. And that's where a reset comes in. A reset to reset yourself. Now, reset any way you want to. The alpha reset is a proven methodology that we actually go through it. You reset to your true north, and then you can move forward just like Rick has, and traveling and running multiple businesses. And now poor Rick, the biggest problem in Rick's life right now that I can see is really his staff. His staff is like, come on, man. They're trying to get work done. And here you got Rick, the business owner, walking around just chatting with them because his businesses are going so well, multiple businesses, that he's got nothing to do that needs to be done, which is a whole nother set of problems, but beautiful problems, if you ask me.
Truly is. It's a great position to be in. From when I was there in the last company, you're just annoying people. It's so funny. So funny.
Oh, that's great. So guys, if you find yourself in this position, right, in this position of being guilty, right, feeling guilty, like maybe it's you leave before the kids get up and you don't get home till they go to bed, right? It's a common thing when you're trying to make your mark. The problem is twofold. One, the feeling of guilty. The feeling of guilty has nothing positive around it, right? It's just a feeling, and it's a good time to self-check. Also, if at that feeling of guilty is something you want to change, you're missing something, and you've been doing this too long, right? Your 6 month, I'm going to grind it out. I'm going to build this startup for the next 6 months is turned into 6 years, maybe just 2 years. right? You've lost your way. I get it. I've been there. Tim, I know you've been there too in the past.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways around this. You want to find your true north. Find that true north, have a reset, and make sure you get back to what's really important to you in this life, what really matters, and clear yourself of the guilt, of the shame, of these things that are holding you down and aren't serving you.
Doug's doing this thing through the video. You. I can't add anything to that. It's you hit the nail on the head. It's so true. You said it so well. You really did. I've really got nothing to say. I've loved the conversation. It always brings me back to checking in with myself and how I'm operating and what I get to do. And it's incredible. And I'll echo what you said in the sense of, get back to what's really important to you. And sometimes it's difficult to understand that. Sometimes it's difficult to answer such a simple question that feels so big. What do you want? Whenever we usually ask the men, what do you want? They often list everything they don't want. Because they don't know what they want, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's natural, but you don't have to settle there. You don't have to live there and stay with that. And sometimes you can't see your own blind spots. So having a reset, going through a reset, I'd love it to be the alpha reset for obvious reasons. It's proven. We see the results time and time again. But however you go about it, just you've got to be able to. If you've got this far in the podcast and this is resonating with you, then you've got to be able to make that shift and have the reset. Otherwise, 12 months on, you'll probably be still listening to this podcast. Nothing will have, I say nothing will have changed. A hell of a lot will have changed because you wouldn't have made a decision, but a lot of things around you will have started to collapse, I bet. There's no such thing as standing still. You either move forwards or you're moving backwards, right? So, I implore you to make a move if you are in this position.
Ah, beautiful. Guys, reset, realign, move forward in passion. Gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. And until next time for another episode of The Powerful Man Show.